Welcome, Soundies, to our Sound for Video session. Tonight is the 19th of September 2020, and we're doing a kind of a different time here just because a couple things, but the main thing is that one of the locations that we haven't been very kind to is Asia and the Pacific region, so we're going to try this and see if this works a little bit better for some of the folks in that region there, hopefully. So we've got a lot of things on our agenda for tonight, so let's jump on over to our agenda and take a look and see what we've got going here. All right, first up, one thing I've had a number of requests for was let's do a sample of the ZOOM ZDM-1. Now, we did that for just a couple seconds on a previous session, but this time I have a couple other microphones set up that are kind of comparable in terms of them being a dynamic microphone. One is the Shure SM7B, the other is the SM58, just to use as reference, really, so you can hear what the Zoom sounds like. And then we'll also, another question that's come up is the whole question of headphone routing, in particular on the MixPre, but we'll also show quickly on the Zoom F6 in this particular case. And then we'll jump into our question and answer. And we have a few good questions to cover. So let's go ahead and jump in, first of all, to our comparison here of the different microphones. So let me just show you. So this is a little bit funny. There's a story here, actually. So Zoom sent me the PodTrack P4, which is their new podcast recorder, and they also sent me the Zoom ZDM-1, which is a dynamic microphone. It actually comes in a pack they call the mic pack, which has the microphone and a set of headphones. For whatever reason, I was having some trouble with the first one. It turns out it was my cable. It wasn't their microphone. And so before I realized that and had sorted that out, I sent a note over to my contact at Zoom, and they sent me a second one. The PodTrack I've sent back, the original microphone I sent back, but the second one they sent me didn't have a mic stand clip, so I have this without a mic stand clip to show you tonight. So I'll do my best to handhold it carefully. So let me go ahead and turn this on. This is going to be running through the Sound Devices MixPre 3, and that'll be routed directly into the A10 Mini Pro, just so you understand what the signal chain is. Let's go ahead and enable this. So let's switch over to the MixPre. We should be getting sound. Let's just double check. Okay, the director is nodding her head. Okay, this is the ZDM-1 from Zoom. It's a dynamic microphone, and it is very affordable. It's with the mic pack, I believe it's $120. That comes with a set of headphones, and the microphone itself, that comes with a small desk stand, and it comes with a mic stand adapter. So this is what this sounds like, and let me just do a couple of things. I'm going to do... let's see, I'm going to go ahead and take this cover off really quickly. Let me mute it while I do that so it doesn't hurt your ears. So that is without the foam cover on it. It does come with a foam cover as well. And let's do a little sibilance test first. So she sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore. Now I'm going to go ahead and pop this back on. She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore. So there's a little bit of a sibilance test for you. Let's do a popped, kind of a plosive test. Let me just pop this back off again. 1 second. Okay. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, or as Bandrew says, please bring pizza pronto. And then I'll go ahead and put the foam cover back on here. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, or please bring pizza pronto. There's some plosive testing there. So just want to get your ears used to the ZDM-1 here so that when we switch over to our next microphone, and I'm going to get this one out of our way here for just a moment. And next up, what we're going to do is we're going to bring in the Shure SM7B here. But before I do that, let me do a test where we kind of talk around the microphone to get a sense for its off-color axis, or off-axis coloration and its polar pattern. So right now I'm pretty much on axis at 0 degrees, go ahead and turn the microphone. Now we are off axis at 90 degrees, and I'll go ahead and keep turning. We are now at 180 degrees, and I really need to have my headphones on. Back to 90 degrees here, and now we're coming back, and we are back on axis at 0 degrees. So that is kind of a quick test, kind of hopefully to get your ears used to this microphone before we switch over to the next one. Okay, let's go ahead and mute that. All right, now we should be here on the Shure SM7B. Okay, put my headphones on there. Ooh, okay, we've got our levels set there. Coming back out, get my level set. Okay, so here's a listen to the Shure SM7B relative to the ZDM-1. It's always good, I think, to put a couple of microphones next to each other just so you can, because your ears kind of just get used to a microphone after a while. And so it's almost like your brain plays a little, oh, I think we're panned. I'm going to go ahead and pan that back center. That's interesting. Okay, yeah, we're back center now. Okay, so sorry about that. Mistake on the mixer here. So Shure SM7B here. Let's go ahead and do the same things here. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, or please bring pizza pronto. And then let's go ahead and do a plosives test. I'm going to mute here for just a moment while I pull this cover off. Okay, please bring pizza pronto, or Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Back on there. Okay, so people are saying, Daniel says, much better now with the SM7B. The foam cover really helped with the plosives on the Zoom. Okay, cool. Thanks for the feedback. I appreciate that. That's good to hear these things. Let's go ahead and talk around the edge of the side of the microphone here. So we're on axis at 0 degrees right here on the Shure SM7B. Now we are off axis by 90 degrees on the Shure SM7B. Coming up a little bit closer there. There we go. More like that. That's about 90 degrees. And now we are off axis by 180 degrees. Coming back to 90 degrees off axis. And now here we are back on axis. And I'm going to go ahead and normally I would set it up something like this if I were doing a live stream. So that is the Shure SM7B. And we also have, now of course the Shure SM7B is a substantially more expensive microphone. It used to be $350, now runs $400 US, which is interesting. And then here we have a Shure SM58. We'll go ahead and switch over to that next. Okay, you should be hearing the Shure SM58. Good, okay. Go ahead and move this back up here. All right, Shure SM58. So Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Please bring pizza pronto. I think this one has a tendency to seriously plosive. Okay, checking 1, 2, 3. Okay. Interestingly, let me just talk about where we had the gain set on each of these microphones. On the SM58, we're at 66 dB of gain. On the SM7B, we were at 72. And on the Zoom ZDM-1, we were at 64. So I think that's where you get kind of roughly the same overall levels with those three settings, interestingly. So of course the Shure SM7B needs the most at 72, and this is at 66 right now. Now we're running it a little bit hot because we're live streaming here, but for live streaming you would normally do that, so that's not unusual at all. So this is again Shure SM58. What else did I need to do here? Did I do the plosive test already? She says yes. I don't know. Oh yeah, let's do an off-axis test. Give me just a second here. We're going to take this off the stand here. We are right on axis at 0 degrees. I'm going to go ahead and start turning the microphone. We are now 90 degrees off axis, just so you can get a sense for what that sounds like. And now we are at 180 degrees off axis. You're probably mostly getting reflected sound at this point. Back on at 90 degrees off axis. And now here we are back on axis at 0 degrees. All right, is there anything else that I should do here that you guys would like to hear? Let me go ahead and switch back to the Zoom, and we'll just get that back on here. All right, we are now back on the ZOOM ZDM-1, just to kind of reset our ears again, so you can hear what the ZOOM ZDM-1 sounds like. And again, I have this set to 64 dB of gain, and that's getting us somewhere, and we're peaking somewhere right around -12 roughly. So that is the ZOOM ZDM-1. If you've got any questions, I'm curious that we can take a look at that as well. So yes, the SM58 does have foam covers also. I don't happen to have one on hand. It would have been nice to be able to do that as well. It would have been a fairer comparison. Oh, this seems to have picked up a piece of Velcro. Let's go ahead and get that off of there. Okay. Not that that was probably affecting the sound a whole lot, but all right, let's go ahead and switch back to our main microphone here. All right, we're back on the Earthworks here, and that's being routed through, again, the Apollo and the camera there. All right, so there's the ZOOM ZDM-1. If you do have, if you have specific questions about the ZDM-1, let me know. Yes, the SM7B is an XLR mic. All three of those actually are XLR mics, so they're all dynamic microphones, so they're similar that way. The SM58 runs $99 US. The ZDM-1 runs $119 in a mic pack with the microphone and a set of headphones. And then the SM7B runs $400 US. So just wanted to choose some microphones which could plausibly be used for live streaming or other kind of live applications, or perhaps podcasting. So that's the idea there. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at headphone routing. And let me just give you some background here on why we're looking at this. I've gotten... Oh, wait, we have a question. Have producer talk for crosstalk rejection. Oh, okay, so you want... Oh, okay, you want Emma to talk as well. Okay, well, let's do that. That's fair. All right, let's switch back over to the MixPre. All right, I am on the MixPre here, and we're getting decent level somewhere around -12, and now we're going to have our producer talk and say something witty. That's you.
Oh, you mean from over here?
Yeah.
Oh, what's a crosstalk rejection?
Well, that's when, so when you're doing a podcast, for example, you have two people, say, in a room, and they each have their own microphone, but when you talk and I'm not talking, your voice bleeds into my microphone.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay.
Yeah. So tell us some more stuff.
More stuff?
Yeah.
I'm afraid I don't have anything witty to say. I'm sorry. I missed that expectation. I just sit out of the frame and press buttons.
Okay. I wanted to turn the microphone there. You can, of course, use the polar pattern to help, change that response, but there's some sense there for what it sounds like. You're sitting probably a meter away, maybe just a little less?
About a meter.
About a meter. Okay. So there's some, thanks for that. That's a good question. All right. We'll go ahead and switch that off. All right. We're back on the Earthworks here. Okay. Let's jump over to the MixPre here. I want to show you headphone routing. So the MixPre in particular is a little bit more flexible when it comes to routing than the Zoom products are, just a little bit. And the question came up, hey, I have this set up as an audio interface, but I can't hear anything if I plug into the headphone jack. What's going on? And so what I needed to do was, and I got actually a couple of those questions this week. So let's just run through it really quickly and talk about headphone routing in general, but also some specifics here. So if I want to change, well, first of all, the MixPre here, if I come into the menu and then I come up here to the menu at the top where you see the headphones, that's where I can choose what I want to listen to. I can listen to the left-right stereo mix. I can listen to the left-right mix summed down to mono. I can listen to USB 1 and 2, and that would be a quick way to get in and be able to hear just what's coming back from the computer, if you wanted to do that. Or you can listen to your presets. Here I have preset 1, which I call ISOs. I've also got presets 2, 3, and 4, and then we can also edit our headphone presets. And then we also have another setting here. We'll come back to that another time. So first of all, let me just kind of show you how to set up a preset. So right now I'm on preset number 2. I'm going to click or tap on Edit Headphone Preset here. Now it asks me essentially which one do you want to edit. I'm going to edit preset 2. And now we have our menu. Now, if you're the kind of person that likes metaphors, maybe this will work for you, maybe it won't. But basically, this is just like ordering a pizza. You just have to tell it what you want on your pizza or what you want to hear in your headphones. It's that simple. So the top half of the screen here, or the top set of numbers and little boxes here, is what you're going to hear in your left ear, and the bottom set of boxes is what you're going to hear in your right ear. All right, so the specific request I got earlier this week was, hey, I want to be able to hear my microphone, plus I want to be able to hear the people that I'm talking to on Zoom on my MixPre, and I've set this up as an audio interface. So in that particular case, she was connected to input number 1, and then we would also want to hear what was coming back from the computer on USB 1 and 2. So that's what we would choose here to do that for the left side, and then we'd also do the same thing for the right side if I just wanted to hear the same thing in both ears. So that's all you have to do. So really, again, like ordering a pizza, you just tell it what you want on your pizza. And you can cut your pizza in half and put something on one half and put other things on the other half. So that's a very simple example. Let's go in and do something a little bit more sophisticated here. You'll see here, I'll go ahead and tap those back off. Here our USB, we'll turn those off. You'll notice that when I come back to number 1 here, and when I press it again, it turns green. So blue means post-fader, green means pre-fader. What does that mean? That means that if I choose pre-fader here, what I'm going to hear, let's say I'm in advanced mode here, I am going to hear input number 1 before any effect of the fader has been applied to it. So regardless of where I set that fader, input number 1 in my headphones is going to sound the same. I can turn it all the way up or all the way down, it's still going to sound the same. If I choose post fader, what'll happen is if I turn it down, it's going to be a much quieter in my headphone mix. Or if I turn fader number 1 all the way up, it's going to sound a lot louder. So that's the simple way to think about that there. Now, what's interesting here is on the MixPre, you can actually choose to listen to the left or right mix as well. In addition to the isolated channel, you're going to potentially, things can start to sound kind of weird if you do that. Just be aware of that, but it does give you that flexibility if you want to do that. So, okay. Another kind of use case, when I'm doing production sound on a film set, sometimes what I like to do is I actually can hear a little bit better in my right ear. So I oftentimes will put the boom microphone on channel number 1 in my right ear. And then coming back over here, I will put the wireless channels in my left ear. And so that way I can spend most of my time kind of keeping my ear on the boom mic with my best ear and just kind of keep those wireless mics in the background. And, just so I know if there's going to be any clothing noise, or if we've lost one of the mics or something like that. So that's one use case that I sometimes use when doing production sound as far as headphone mixes are concerned. So, all right, so that's how we do this on the MixPre. So let me go ahead and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just blank this out. So I'm starting with a blank one. Okay, so that's MixPre. What about on the Zoom F series? Let's go ahead and switch over to the Zoom F6 here. Just quickly move that out of my way a little bit. Power up the F6 here. Looks like we might need to focus that a little bit. Shaky camera. Okay. So for the Zoom, it's interesting because when you hook this up as an audio interface, a USB audio interface, what happens is it automatically routes the USB from the computer back into the headphone jack. So you don't have to do anything. You don't have to set anything up. Some people will think, oh, that's nice. That's easier. It is easier, but it's also not as flexible. So It's just kind of a trade-off. No big deal necessarily. If it's working for you, it's great. So we're going to come into the output menu, then to the headphone out, and then we can come into routing from there. We have 10 different presets on the whoops. If I push in the headphone volume knob here on the side, I can switch between the different presets, and we have 10 of them, you'll see. Let's come back down to 1. Same thing works here. Whoops. Okay, forgot. Now you got to use these keys on the F6. So if I wanted to hear input number 1, post-fade. Oh, actually, that's pre-fade. I want to hear that post-fade. So it represents it a little differently here. You can see it's a red half of the square there if it's post-fade, and it's a blue half of the square there if it's pre-fade. But you can see here that you don't have the option to choose the USB. That's just not an option. It just automatically plays that. You also do have these mid-side options down here. So if you have linked a couple of your channels, 1 and 2 for example, into a mid-side stereo pair, you could choose to listen to that as well. So it has essentially a mid-side decoder there. So you can hear that in your headphones. Otherwise, everything else is pretty much the same. Again, you can listen to just the left and right mix if you want to do that. You can also listen to the line outputs. So if you do apply the fader and you choose, I believe you can choose these post-fader. Yep, post-fade. In fact, that's all you can choose is post-fade on the line outputs. So those are an option there as well. So hopefully that's helpful for you. You have a kind of a very basic understanding of what you can do with your headphone routing. It just gives you some flexibility in allowing you to do, you know, what's going to work in the particular situation that you're in. So something to keep in mind. And if you are having trouble with those, you know, just go ahead and drop us a note, and we can always cover your particular situation a little bit better if we need to do that. All right, let's go ahead and jump into our questions and see what we've got there. All right, first up from Tom D. Is there a good way to feed a device like the Rode Wireless Go with its 3.5 millimeter out into the XLR input of a recorder like a MixPre, Zoom device, etc.? My understanding is that the recorder expects a mic level signal, but the powered device, the Wireless Go, might output a higher level. Well, let's take a look at that, Tom. Just grabbing. Okay, let's go ahead and switch over here back to the MixPre. All right, let's just make sure this is going to shake just a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead. Here what I have is a Wireless Go from Rode. Whoops, there it is, so you can see it. Go ahead and get that powered up. And the same with the transmitter. I'm going to go ahead and wear the transmitter. Okay. Let's see, you can see just on the edge here, well, it just kind of went away. We have 3 different settings for the output level on the Wireless Go. You can see if you look at this little triangle here, this is the lowest setting, mid setting, high setting. And you're right, it does feed a line level signal. And in fact, that's exactly what the MixPre is expecting. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and pull out that input right there. Let's come into here, let's gain down. Okay. Now, I'm going to use a VXLR adapter. So this has 3.5 millimeter on one side, it's TRS, and then it is an XLR on the other side. So we can go ahead and plug the Wireless Go output into the XLR adapter. Pop that here into the MixPre. All right, we're going to go ahead and put the receiver down here. And let's go ahead and start gaining up here. Checking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, we're muted. Okay, let's unmute. There we go. We have our gain set to, let's go 28. See where that puts us. Okay, we're going to go ahead and switch over to the Wireless Go. Give me just 1 second. Okay, you should be hearing me now on the Wireless Go. Okay, so this is what that sounds like now. So we didn't have to do anything special. We just set it to the highest output level on the Wireless Go. And then we gained up here, and we ended up with our gain set to 28 decibels. So it works just fine, Thomas. That's great news. All you need is this VXLR adapter. Rode makes that. I believe it's about $10 US, so it's pretty straightforward. You can definitely get your Wireless Go into something like a MixPre just like that. All right, let's switch back. Go ahead and mute that. And we'll take a look at our next question here. Okay, next up from Tom W. Tom asks, can you shed some light on MP3 with the timecode delivery for transcription? Let's just get that cleaned up there. From what I am finding out, timecode will be either embedded in one channel of audio or ID3 tagged with the beginning timecode. Can the Zoom F4, F8 embed, or is that only available on some sound devices? I assume you mean sound devices recorders. No, it actually is available on the F series as well. I did a recording here to MP3, and what I'll show you here, let me go ahead and switch over to the file that I recorded. This is showing it just on my desktop here. I just went and got info on this file. And you'll notice here down under authors in the metadata, it puts the timecode start in the authors field. Now, that's somewhat arbitrary, but that's what they do. So, so that's where your timecode value is going to be stored. Hopefully that's helpful for you. I don't know exactly the rest of your workflow, but it does stamp that in the metadata on the ID3 tags. So it is there. I don't know whatever software you're using, whether it'll read that or not, but that's where you will find it. Okay. Next up is a question from Andre. You've discussed this subject in the recent past, however, I still have an inquiry regarding the LUFS war out there. I'm working on a music CD release project and want to know if you can point me in the right direction where I might find a standard LUFS levels for vinyl recording versus for CD and for Spotify or Apple Music or etc. So let me pause right there, Andre. There is no standard level for any of those. It's not there's no standard level, well, vinyl excluded. I don't know about vinyl. Well, I can tell you that LUFS wasn't developed before vinyl became available as a technology. So, and I don't know the specific requirements as far as vinyl is concerned. I know there's a less dynamic range in vinyl than there is with digital in most cases. In any case, so I don't know the answer to that, but this is important to understand. There is no standard for those formats in terms of loudness target. That's the first thing. Okay, back to the question, and we'll dive in a little bit more here. The online research I've done show that everybody has an opinion, and these opinions will differ greatly from one another. This is proving to be a daunting task. Who is using what application to determine LUFS levels is a big question. All right. Pause there again. LUFS is a documented standard way for measuring the loudness of audio. It's not arbitrary. So regardless of which application you're using to measure LUFS, as long as it's using the standard LUFS measurement, it should not be different, at least not greatly different from application to application. So you should be consistent there. What you will find, though, is that different online services have different targets that they use. So it's not as if there's one required target for digital audio. It really depends on a few things. Number one, if you're going to broadcast television in the United States or the European Union, there are loudness target standards there. You do have to meet the loudness targets, or you cannot be any louder than the loudness targets. So in the United States, it is the ITU BS 1770 standard, and the target there is minus 24 LKFS, which is the same as LUFS for the purposes of our discussion here. In the European Union, EBU R128, the standard is minus 23 LUFS for stereo audio program. So those are the only hard and fast, like legal requirements of which I'm aware. I think radio may also now have some in some localities, so you'd need to check in those cases. But if you're going to an online streaming service, there is no governing body that specifies what online streaming audio needs to play back in terms of loudness. And so let me go back to your question really quickly. You kind of lead us to the next step here. There we go. Okay. This site is about the only one that may make sense without knowing how they set the level as a point of reference. And he references loudnesspenalty.com. So let me go ahead and pull that up. I actually uploaded a file there. And this is a file that I measured with Adobe Audition with a loudness meter at minus 9.9 LUFS. So what this website's telling you, Andre, is it's telling you essentially what the different services, online services, use as their loudness target. And you can see they're different. So for example, YouTube, because they're saying on this particular reading here, I uploaded my minus 9.9 LUFS audio, it said, hey, what YouTube is going to do is actually drop that down by 4.1 LUFS. So they're going to actually play it back at minus 14 LUFS, even though my original or my delivered file was at minus 9.9 LUFS. Okay, so what we can deduce from this is that YouTube's loudness target is minus 14 LUFS. Same with Spotify, exact same thing with Tidal. iTunes is a little different. They actually would say they would play it back at minus 3 LUFS, quieter. So they would actually drop it to minus 13 LUFS. Amazon Music would do the same at minus 4.1, so they're just like YouTube, Spotify, and Tidal. Pandora would do minus 3.7. I guess they wanted to be a little bit louder than everybody else, which is weird. Okay. And then Deezer would be at minus 5.1. I think Deezer focuses, if I'm not mistaken, mainly on podcasts, but I'm not positive on that. So that's all this is telling you here. So I hope that helps clarify some things for you. In terms of where you want to set the loudness on yours, if you're going to some of these platforms like Spotify and iTunes, you probably want to come in somewhere around minus 14, potentially. But there are also some artistic decisions as well, because as soon as you get to minus 14, well, actually, I should say it this way. There are a couple of nuances here. Essentially, minus 14 is the loudest that those platforms want you to play back your audio at, or the loudness they want you to be mastered to. So if you're louder than that, then they will actually drop you back down. So you know, they're basically, I guess as the website suggests, you've committed a penalty and they're going to pull you back down in terms of overall loudness. So that's really all that means. Now, here's another thing that's very important to understand. The louder your audio is in terms of loudness units full scale, invariably the less dynamic range you have. And so people that are taking this, pop music in particular, and they're mastering it to minus 10 LUFS, which is exactly where our introductory music was actually measured at. When it goes on those streaming platforms, they're going to pull it back down. So even though you are going to sacrifice that dynamic range and get it down to minus 10 LUFS, it's not doing you a whole lot of good if loudness is your goal, because they're going to pull it back down and play it back at minus 14 LUFS. And then you just have basically chopped off waveforms that don't get as loud as you had originally mastered it. So that's something to take into consideration. Now, my personal feeling is, like on YouTube, for example, I usually aim for minus 16 or minus 17 LUFS for spoken word content, just because I prefer the additional dynamic range that retains. But, if you look at the YouTube stats, if you go to a YouTube video and as you're playing it back, right click and choose Show Stats for Nerds, that will show you how far off that minus 14 LUFS target you are. Interestingly, some of the services will actually boost your audio up if it's not at the loudness standard that they've set for themselves, and some of them will not. YouTube, it turns out, from what I can tell, if you get louder than their target, they'll pull you down, but if you're not as loud as their target, they'll do nothing. And I actually appreciate that. I appreciate that they're not pushing it through the roof, because then it would sound like it'd be hyper compressed in some cases and wouldn't sound great. So anyway, there are some thoughts there, Andre. I hope that helps clarify some things. And if not, just send me another note and we'll clarify some further. So, all right. Next up from Jason, I'm wondering if you or anyone in the community has built one of the upgrade kits from micparts.com. I'm tempted. Well, I have to confess, I have not, Jason. So just for those that are not familiar with micparts.com, let's take a look here real quick. Website looks like they have some mod kits for existing microphones, and they have some kits where you can build your own microphone. You can buy the capsules, basically design your own microphone. So some cool stuff there. Looks like a lot of fun. I just got my soldering iron earlier this summer, so I haven't done a whole lot yet. Maybe at some point here we'll jump into that world as well. But it looks like a lot of fun. If anyone else here has experience with some of those kits, would love to know about it and see what your experience has been here so far. So, all right. Man, we plowed through that faster than I expected. So hopefully that's good. So Let's go to the chat here and see if we have any questions that people would like to ask. If you can, just go ahead and put @CurtisJetAudio in the front of that. That'll help find those questions a little bit better. Compare the ZDM to, say, the pod mic. I do not have a pod mic on hand to compare it to. Someday I'll get my hands on a pod mic and we'll give that a try. That's also about a $99 microphone, as I understand, dynamic microphone also, made for podcasting. Yeah, if I can get my hands on one, we'll definitely do that comparison at some point. All right, is there any reason to set inputs to pre-fader feeding earphones? Well, yeah, I mean, sometimes there is. Sometimes you want to hear what the raw audio coming in on that input sounds like. So it's important to know what that sounds like, for example, when you're recording isolated channels. So if you're in advanced mode on the MixPre, pardon me, you want to know exactly what it sounds like before the fader. One second, a little frog in the throat here. So that's one scenario I can think of where you might want to listen pre-fader. Yeah, so that's one example there where pre-fader may be the thing to do. All right. Anyone else experience lower pitch audio in Zoom meetings or the like when using MixPre as an interface? I have not experienced that. So it actually pitches your voice down. I would make sure, now Zoom does plenty of processing, so you have to make sure you separate the audio interface from the processing that Zoom is doing. So make sure, I think there's a way to turn the processing off in Zoom, and you'll want to make sure you do that. So that would be the first thing I would check. I don't know if anyone else has had other experiences with that. All right. Does Zoom just sell the ZDM-1 mic by itself? And if so, what is the price for just the mic? You know, that's an interesting question. I looked a little bit before the live stream here, and I only saw it in the mic pack, the kit. However, when they sent it to me, let me just show you this. Backing up. The one they sent to me was just the microphone in the box. So I'm not entirely sure. If you can just buy the mic, my guess is going to be $99, but I don't really know. If anyone else has seen it out there available at retailers, let us know. But yeah, so I'm not sure. It's kind of a mixed message I'm getting. All right, next up, what audio editor would you recommend? Wavelab? I've not used Wavelab. I use Adobe Audition mostly. I use also DaVinci Resolve Fairlight. Fairlight's actually free it's part of DaVinci Resolve there's a free version. It's very capable. There's Audacity if you want to stay free. I'm not familiar with Wavelab. I think that's bundled with some of the Zoom products, but I've never used it. And I don't know if that's both Mac and PC or just PC, not sure. So I haven't used that one, but there's some thoughts there. So, you know, I think Audacity is a good place to start to become familiar with audio processing and editing. But it does have some definite limitations that you'll run up against at some point. So I actually learned in Audacity. That's where I first started doing audio editing and learning how to use a compressor and things like that. So not a bad place to start, but there you will bump into some limitations at some point, especially if you're doing mixing for video. That's where you kind of run into some limitations in particular. So those are some thoughts there. Thinking of skipping RX8 this round, thoughts of the upgrade. I upgraded. There's some nice things. It's not a huge different. And I if you're happy with RX7, I think that's perfectly fine to skip. There are some things that I haven't put it to heavy duty use yet. I've just kind of been doing kind of the standard EQ, loudness normalization stuff, a little bit of denoising, dehumming, stuff like that. So I haven't been putting it to hard use, but evidently there is a dialogue isolate. They've made some upgrades to that. So anyway, there's some thoughts there on that. Yeah, if you're happy, don't upgrade if you're happy, unless there's something in the new version you need. Have you heard of any reviews of the Sennheiser E614? It's the cheapest supercardioid mic I can find at $199.95 besides the Samson CO2. I have not reviewed that one. I haven't seen any reviews of it specifically. It's on my list, has been for quite some time. So many mics, so little time. I've never been horribly disappointed with a Sennheiser microphone, so that's positive. There is also the Octava. The problem, actually, I've been pretty happy with my Octava. There is a hypercardioid version of that. Some people have said that they had reliability issues with that. Mine's been good. I've had mine for, gosh, probably at least 3 years, and it's been okay. So that's another consideration. That one's right around that same price point of $200-ish, roughly. So still on my list. I'll try to get to it. Doing my best. The option in the Zoom service is use original audio, and it can't be set as a preference. Each user must manually enable it upon joining a Zoom session. Good to know. Thank you for the clarification. And yes, I think it's funny because you want to check it to use the original audio, and you still have, I think there's some other checkboxes to turn other things off as well. So that's worth checking as well. Okay. Wavelab. Curtis would like to start processing my interview audio files before syncing them and importing into Final Cut Pro 10. I would also like to batch process the files with compression and limiting. Yeah, I mean, if Wavelabs does that and you've got it, definitely give it a try. I have nothing bad to say about Wavelabs, I must confess. All right. I think that's all we've had come in so far. So what are some things coming up? I can talk, as we're waiting for more questions here, I can tell you, let's see, what we have coming up. First of all, this is just a note here for we need a lamp to put this in. Can you work on that?
I already did.
You already did. Oh, she's so awesome. Okay. The video coming up for tomorrow is a review of a budget LED light panel called the GVM MB832. It's a relatively small, it's smaller than a 1x1, but it's a pretty nice little panel for, I think it's $229 US. So not a bad panel if you're looking for a light panel of some sort, LED light panel on a budget. So check that out. That'll be up tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. our time, US Mountain Daylight, which is UTC -6. So that's coming up. And then we have a few other things coming up. Let me go ahead and just pull those up and just give you a sense, kind of a preview of what's coming. All right. I'm working on a collaboration video with another fellow by the name of Tyler. I've seen his videos and I've forgotten his last name. We're going to get it here. Tyler Edwards, I believe. Yes, Tyler Edwards. I'm going to be talking about audio recorders, and then I'll have an expanded version of that on my podcast, the Learn, Light, and Sound podcast. So if you're interested in, it's really kind of a question of what kind of recorder makes sense for your particular situation based on the type of projects you're working on. So we have that coming up. And then, let me just pull up my little list here of additional things we have coming on the review queue. We are still waiting on the Zoom PodTrack P4 to arrive. I needed to pull that original review, which we did, because it was a pre-production version. I want to work with a production version. There were a couple of things that Zoom contacted me back and said, "Hey, that's not fair." That was a pre-production version, and they hadn't told me it was a pre-production version. I thought it was already shipping. So, in any case, I pulled that off, and we'll go ahead and update that as soon as my the production version that I have pre-ordered with my own money arrives, and then we'll work on that. We do have the Deity D4 Pro in-house. That's a little camera top shotgun microphone that has a capsule that faces forward, and it's fairly directional. Also has one that faces to the rear. So if you want to do a kind of walk-up interview, could be a potentially nice choice. And definitely for vlogging and things of that nature. I started to work on a video on setting up the ASIO drivers in Windows for the MixPre, and I ran into some problems, so I'm still trying to sort those out. The main problem I have is I don't have a good screen recorder app for Windows, so I have to work on that. All right. Then we also have some lighting things. There'll be some more lighting videos as well. So let's go back to the questions and see what we've got there in the chat. How much tear down did you do before you looked at the bad cable? How much tear down? Well, let me pull that out here. Did you mean to ask how much of my hair did I pull out before I figured out it was the cable? Not that much actually, but it just kind of occurred to me after I swapped out different microphones and I was getting the same issue, that it was probably the cable. So I looked at the cable, I opened it up. The actual connections at the connectors, which are Neutrik connectors, it's actually, decent connectors. All the solder joints are looking solid. But what I did notice is that it's hard to actually, let's go to the overhead camera here. Oh, see, I've developed a mess here through the course of this thing. And let's get that focused. Okay. So the solder joints were good. Pull this guy off. You can get cold solder joints. That's possible as well. So there could be some things that I'm missing in terms of the, the solder joints. There could be something funky going on there. But what I did notice is that there was not a whole lot of shielding. There's this kind of copper shielding here. It's a pretty narrow gauge cable. So I'm not entirely sure what's gone wrong. I've held on to it. I might try to cut things off and re-terminate it and just see if that makes a difference. So I have to order some more of the connectors here, but that's as much tear down as I've done. I haven't gone beyond that. So I don't know if that's what you meant or if you meant tear down of the signal chain. But in terms of tearing down the cable, that's what I've done here. So put that back together. All right, let's see who is next. Is there an advanced level Fairlight course coming? There's definitely a plan to do that in the long run. Right now, what I'm working on is I have a collaboration working on a lighting course with a couple of DPs, my brother being one of them, and then Levi Whitney being the other. And they're actually shooting this weekend. So that's good news. We're doing this one in different cities. We're all in different cities. And so we're kind of collaborating long distance to make this work. So that one's coming, and then I am working on another one that I can't announce yet. It is sound related. It is not Fairlight related, so Fairlight's definitely still in the queue. It's just not in the short term, but we will get to that for sure. Okay, just finished a doc film shoot this week. I was using mid-side shotgun mic. The side was very sensitive to picking up my suspension clicking. Is this a Rycote blimp or a mid-side issue? Ooh. It sounds like it could be a blimp. I mean, if your blimp should never make any noise, unless I'm not sure how you had things configured in there. Is it one of the blimps that's actually made for that? I know they have. I think it's a Cyclone line actually, not their more traditional line of blimp covers that have configurations for stereo recording. And I don't know if they have one specifically for mid-side, but I guess we need to know. Did you rig something up yourself in there, and is it maybe one of the mics is bumping against something? Not really sure there, but a blimp shouldn't impose any sort of sound there. Or maybe it was your cable. I'm not sure. Just so many possibilities there. But if anyone has some advice there, or Ken, if you wouldn't mind kind of clarifying which particular blimp you were using and what it's, was it set up specifically for that, or how is it configured? we'll take a look there. Any recommendations on a good boundary microphone? Just got my P4. Ah. Oh, good. P4s are shipping. That's good to know. Hopefully I get mine soon. I don't specifically have any recommendations. I have an old Audio-Technica, which they don't make anymore. And it sounds okay. It sounds like a boundary microphone, so it's not the cleanest thing in the world, but it's a useful tool for the right situation. But I don't have any specific recommendations. Audio-Technica makes pretty good stuff, and I know they have a good series of them. I think Sennheiser has at least a couple of them as well. I don't know. In the comments or the chat, if anyone has recommendations, definitely let us know. All right, back from Ken. It's a Rycote WS4 blimp with a 5-pin XLR, 2 duo lyre mounts. Okay, so it sounds like it's really set up for that particular purpose. I am at a loss. I don't know. I haven't done mid-side recording in a blimp, to be honest, so I don't have any specific help there. So yeah, I apologize. If anyone else is familiar with that particular one and has run into those issues or kind of solved that before. So that's something to look at. All right, looks like Lloyd is willing to fix my XLR cable. Maybe I'll get that shipped over to you, Lloyd. I suspect there are actually some kinks in here. This one got abused. I think there might be some integrity issues with the cable itself. So I don't know how much I'm going to invest in that particular cable, to be 100% honest, but anyway. Next up, when filming in rooms with lots of hard reflective surfaces, are sound blankets and a cardioid, not shotgun microphone, the main things that will help you? Other tips? Yeah, I think sound blankets are a huge, huge help. Anything that's directional is going to help as well. The thing with here's a thing with shotgun microphones indoors. It's not necessarily a problem. The biggest problem I found with shotgun microphones indoors, if you do have a lot of reverberation, this can become a problem. And I have had this happen a few times. But if you do have, if a sound source gets into the side of the microphone in a very, very near time frame as in the front of the microphone, you get this weird kind of warbly phase thing going on. That's the big issue. And that's where reverberant rooms can potentially be an issue, where you've got a lot of timing stuff going on, where you've got sound going out, bouncing off a wall, coming back into the side of the microphone. If it's oriented just right, you'll get that warble. So yeah, I would say sound blankets are a huge, huge help. I would love to hear other people's recommendations as well. But those are usually my main approaches. I usually use a super, and I use sound blankets as much as possible. So those are the two main things that I go to. Also, another thing is if you have other sound sources in the room, try and eliminate those as well. The biggest thing, like refrigerators, freezers, just make sure you leave yourself a fail-safe way to remember to plug them back in when you've unplugged them. Or if you turn off an HVAC system, make sure you turn it back on as soon as you're done shooting. That can be really annoying to the people that are left there if you don't turn those back on. And you can ruin a lot of food too if you don't turn a fridge back on. So one of the tricks that I learned from Rick Veers actually is when you unplug a fridge, put your car keys in it if you're on location somewhere. That way you cannot leave until you go get your car keys and remember, oh, I got to turn this fridge back on. So that's one kind of trick to maybe that will help in that situation. So, all right. Any suggestion on the best mic to record Foley sounds? I'm shooting a macro video and dropping fruit into water and trying to capture that sound close up. Most of the Foley artists I've seen use shotgun microphones, and when I've done my Foley recording, I've used shotgun microphones as well. So I've used the NTG5, I've used the NTG3 from Rode. I have used my DPA 4017B. Back in many years ago, I used even the Rode NTG2. Not my first choice of shotgun microphones, but the DADS mic 2. Usually, if you're trying to get a very isolated sound for the Foley, shotgun microphones are often what the Foley artists will use. Can you record a FaceTime call through USB-C onto the Zoom F6? Well, the audio portion, you should be able to, yes. Yeah. Short answer, yes, you can. Just the audio, of course. All right. Looks like we have come to the end of another very fun, I hope it was fun for you, Sound for Video session. Thanks for submitting your questions ahead of time. Thanks for everyone's support. Thanks for everyone getting out there and making the world a better sounding place. Definitely keep doing that, and we'll talk to you again next week. Take care, everybody.